time last year, I was fairly deep into week 1 of my Grand Tour. The tour started a little earlier last year due to, what was it, the Olympics, the World Cup, something. And so, as a result, this year's Tour de France is starting a little bit later. It starts tomorrow, and it got me thinking about the last year, and to be honest with you, about this here bike and what it's been through. And today I picked it up from having a good service in readiness for London to Paris, and I thought I'd just go through some of the things that I'm changing from last year to this year. Now, just in case you want to switch off now, there aren't that many dramatic changes, maybe only 2 sort of biggish ones. Really aren't that big anyway, but I thought I'd give them a go anyway. I only really entrust my good bikes, my TT bike and this one, to 2 people, well, 2 sets of people. One is Robin, who I used to work with at the triathlon shop, and the other one is the Trek shop in Bristol, for obvious reasons, both of which are absolutely amazing mechanics and do amazing work. So I picked up my bike in readiness, and a lot of the things that I've had changed on it, or I've changed on it in the last couple of months, are purely down to wear and tear. So things like the chain, right on the edge of its wear, markings for obvious reasons, really the amount of kilometres, the thousands of kilometres I put in last year, I've obviously worn it down, understandably so. However, because I'm running wax chains, they do last considerably longer. Now, if you're interested in that, I've made a video about waxing your chain up here, and I'll leave a playlist to all the research that I've discovered on that here at the end of the video. And the obvious things like brake pads and rotors, they've all been replaced like for like, really. Nothing unusual there. One significant thing that I thought I was going to have to deal with was the bottom bracket. Now, on this Trek Metabones, they got away with the press fit, terrible bottom brackets over the last however many years they run those, and they've changed it to a bottom bracket called a T47. Now, I could feel a definite sort of bit of graunchiness in the what I thought was the bottom bracket, and bought a new Praxis bottom bracket, but actually it turned out to be the pedals. Now, the thing about pedals that annoys me a little bit, particularly look pedals, which I love, is that you can't service them. There's really nothing you can do to make them sort of usable. They go in the bin, and it's a bit annoying. So I'll put on the screen the pedals that I used last year and the pedals that I've replaced it with, both in terms of cost and weight. If I'm honest with you, these cheaper ones that I put on feel absolutely fantastic. So, chain, brake pads, rotors, pedals, nothing out of the ordinary there really to have to replace after some pretty decent mileage. Been impressed with how long they have lasted though. Before I go on to the slight changes, and they really are slight changes, but I'll explain why I made them in a minute, I must just tell you that out of all the bikes I've ridden in my life, this is by far and away the comfiest thing I've ever sat astride. That sounds really wrong. Dude, I don't really know how else to word that. Let's try again. So, this is the comfiest thing I've ever pedalled around anywhere in my life. Not at any point last year in the training or in the actual Grand Tour did I ever feel uncomfortable on this bike. Any discomfort I felt was really purely muscle driven, you know, fatigue driven. Never had any problems with my back or anything like that. Now obviously some of that's to do with the bike fit, but I was riding on some pretty rough roads over in Brecon, and I found this bike incredibly compliant but also incredibly comfortable to ride for that sort of duration. So the reason I point that out is because a couple of changes I've made have been due to comfort, increasing what was already a very comfortable bike. So let's start down here with the wheels. The wheels are the same, the tyres and the tubes are not. They're only slightly different. Last year I rode the Grand Tour on butyl inner tubes, just standard Conti butyl inner tubes. The reason for choosing butyl was because I was completely self-supported. I had to carry a couple of tubes with me the whole time. Butyl inner tubes are really reliable, decent for puncture resistance. So hence the reason for choosing those. I also rode on GP5000s, so sort of tyre du jour really for durability, puncture resistance and rolling resistance, but on 25s. Now I've switched to some latex inner tubes and to some 28 GP 5000s, 28 mils, front and back. Now, when I first started racing bikes, when I was really young, I really couldn't tell you what sort of tyres or wheels we were using because you just had whatever you had. It wasn't really until the mid to late 90s that I really started to look at things like tyres, etc. And I used to race on a pair of Mavic Cosmics, which I loved. I mean, they looked sort of deep section-y, but they were only about 30 mil deep section IM8. And I used tubs, and I used, God, 19 mil track tubs, yellow Vittoria ones, because they were cheap and they were fast and they matched my bike because they were yellow. 19 mil. Now the thinking has changed somewhat over the last couple of decades, I guess, that narrow isn't necessarily faster. Now lots of people far cleverer than me can explain why, but it's to do with hysteresis and all sorts of other clever physicsy things that I don't really, well, I do understand, I just can't really explain them. So we're now on 28 mil tyres. Now there's a great website, you know me, love the nerdiness. I'll put a link below to the bicycle rolling resistance website, which I'm sure again a lot of you are familiar with, where they comparatively test bike tyres against each other. Now there is a comparison between 23, 25, 28 and I think 32 mil Conti GP 5000s. Interestingly enough, the wattage difference that they discovered between a 25 mil with butyl that I was riding on last year and a 28 mil with a latex tube, which I'm riding on this year, is around about 2 watts. Now, if you're paying attention to the sort of tech news at the moment, you'll see at Ceramic Speed have bought out the fairing for their derailleur system, which costs, what was it, £600–700 and saves a couple of watts. Well, I thought to myself, if I can save a couple of watts by replacing some tyres, which I had to do anyway, and replacing some inner tubes, which I could do anyway, then why not do that? Now obviously we're not self-supporting on this ride, we have a mechanic's truck, we essentially have a team car behind us the whole time, so why not? Why not ride on latex tubes? Now, I've ridden on latex tubes before, I've ridden on wider tyres before on my TT bike, and I've always found them really comfortable, but my thought process is, how can I compare it? Well, I've literally just taken 25 mil butyl inner tubes off of this, and I'm riding right now roads that I know, I mean literally I could do this with my eyes shut. I probably shouldn't, and some people drive it like they've got their eyes shut, but I should probably not ride it with my eyes shut. But I know every bump and every dip and every pothole. And I have to say, it feels absolutely bloody brilliant with these tyres and these inner tubes in. It feels smooth, it feels fast, it feels comfortable. Just feels like the edge is just taken out of all of the kind of slight harshness, which was very, very slight anyway on this bike, but it's just improved it. 2 or 3%. Not bad for something that essentially doesn't cost me any more money and might potentially save me a couple of watts, but it is much more comfortable. Well, a couple of percent more comfortable. But when you're riding 3 days from London to Paris, and all of them are well over 100 miles per day, I tell you what, I think I'm going to be grateful for that little bit of extra comfort. The second thing I've changed is staring you right in the face, and those of you that watch the channel regularly probably can't even spot it, is this here bar tape. Now, it is lizard skins again. I've used lizard skin for years on my TT bike, my road bike, cross bike, everything. I like the tackiness of it, that sense of security. Now, I purposely come out without any gloves on today just to try and get a sense of difference between what I had on my bike up until yesterday and what I've got on there now today. The difference being that on my road bike for last year, I had the 1.8 mil, which is super thin. And I think in my head, I was thinking about trying to save a little bit of weight. Now, the 10 kilos or so that I could have shaved off my body weight would have been a much bigger saving for sure than maybe the half gram or the gram that I saved in bar tape. But nonetheless, I went for the lightest thing I could possibly muster. Now, I haven't had any comfort issues with it. I'm pretty sure I rode most stages with gloves on last year. And yeah, no noticeable issues. But again, down to comfort alone really. I've gone for 3.2, it's considerably thicker. It's nice to have a renewed tackiness anyway. And I've come out purposely without gloves on, like I say, just to feel the difference. And the tyres combined with the thicker bar tape, well, it is a noticeable difference. It's, you know when you come off a rough road and then you get onto a really good road, a good road surface, good quality, like this for example, because this is all new road, and you go, oh, like when someone turns the air conditioning off. You hadn't noticed it was on, but they turn the air conditioning off and you go, oh, it's so quiet now. That is the extent of the difference. Now, it hasn't cost me any more in terms of financial cost because I had to replace the bar tape, the inner tubes, the tyres anyway, so I thought I'd just swap them out for something different. And yes, there's a weight penalty, but hey, so is eating a donut, and I've eaten lots of those, so I can't really complain about a weight penalty. But what I've got as a result, it's a far comfier ride, far comfier than I thought I'd notice. And I'm really looking forward in this next block of training in the next week. I've got one more week of big miles, and I'm going to be doing a fair amount of climbing up in the Mendips, just to really rinse the living daylights out of my body really. I'm looking forward to seeing how the differences are on roads that I find very familiar, like I have so far today. So far in this short ride, big differences. Other than that, well, it's the same old bike, same old rider, probably same old fitness levels, if not a little less than last year, but certainly around about the same weight. And you know what, I can't wait. Tour starts tomorrow, and then that'll be our countdown into our 3 days to Paris to meet the Tour and watch the final stage, having rid the Champs-Élysées. And I am excited, I can't wait. I'm really looking forward to hanging out with my brother and just spending a bit of time riding my bike, pushing the pedals around, and not having to worry about routes or other riders or accommodation or food or servicing or carrying spares or any of that stuff. It's gonna be cool. I'm nervous and excited, I'll be honest, nervous and excited about it all. And I'm gonna take you along for the ride. Like I say, the only drawback I've got is I can't film my brother because of the job he does. We can work around that. Who needs my brother? Well, probably me when I'm going up a hill. Need a bit of a tow. You know, one more week, a big block of training before we get there. Join me on it next week. I'm going to take you up some of the climbs in the Mendips, tempt you over to the West Country to do a bit of training, show you some of the secret climbs. And if you aren't subscribed to the channel, why not? Subscribe, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment below about any little minor changes you might have made to your bikes recently that have made a difference. And hit the notifications bell, and I will see you on the next video.